Before the world knew her name, before the story spread across hospitals, news stations, and social media, she was just a little girl named Lily, a bright, curious 8-year-old with golden curls and a laugh that could light up even the gloomiest room. She stopped playing outside, stopped running with Max, stopped laughing the way she used to. The doctors ran tests, blood work, scans, endless appointments, and finally, they delivered the crushing news no parent is ever ready to hear. Make her comfortable. Be with her. Her parents, devastated, tried to fill her remaining days with love and calm. "I think it's time to go." Her parents froze, their hearts breaking as they heard their little girl say the words they'd been dreading. Tears streamed down their faces as they held her fragile hand. But Max did something strange. Instead of lying quietly, he stood up suddenly, his body tense. His eyes locked on Lily with an intensity that made everyone pause. He let out a low, determined bark, not loud, but firm. Then he gently climbed onto the bed and lay across her small body, pressing his chest to hers as if shielding her from something unseen. But something extraordinary was happening beneath the surface, something the doctors didn't understand. Max began to act differently. He would nudge Lily gently at specific times, sometimes sitting upright and staring intensely at her as if urging her to stay awake, to fight. He would press his warm body against hers. His heart beat strong and steady as if trying to sync with hers. On the worst nights, when her breathing became shallow, Max would suddenly let out a soft but urgent whimper, drawing the family's attention moments before her vitals dipped on the monitors. It was as if he could sense things even the machines couldn't detect. Lily's condition was rare, aggressive, and untreatable by conventional medicine. There were treatments to ease her pain, but none to stop what was coming. The house that had always been filled with warmth and joy became quiet, heavy with unspoken fear. Max, sensing something was wrong, never left her side. Lily lived in a quiet suburban neighborhood with her parents and her best friend in the entire world, a gentle golden retriever named Max. But nothing worked. Day by day, she seemed to slip further away. Her voice became faint, her body frail, and her once bright eyes dulled with exhaustion. She was confined to a hospital bed in her room, surrounded by soft blankets and the quiet hum of medical machines. Through it all, Max stayed. He lay beside her bed, his head resting on the edge, watching her every breath with silent devotion. Nurses and doctors noticed how he refused to leave, how he barely ate unless Lily touched his bowl, how his entire world was focused on her. From the moment Lily could walk, Max was by her side. He was more than a pet. He was her shadow, her guardian, her secret keeper. They shared everything: endless games in the backyard, whispered bedtime stories, and even the silent comfort of sitting together when words weren't enough. But one autumn, everything changed. It started with fatigue. Lily, once full of boundless energy, began to tire easily. As Lily's body grew weaker, her parents tried everything: experimental treatments, consultations with specialists, prayers whispered late at night when they thought she was asleep. The doctors told the family gently to prepare. "She doesn't have much time," they said. One evening, when the autumn sun was setting in streaks of orange and gold, Lily whispered faintly to Max. "I'm tired," she said. What happened next would leave the entire room in stunned silence. The golden hues of the sunset filtered through the blinds in Lily's bedroom, casting soft stripes of light across the walls as the machines beside her bed hummed quietly. Oblivious to the growing tension in the room, her mother sat at the foot of the bed, gently stroking her daughter's fragile legs under the blanket, while her father stood at the window, arms crossed, eyes hollow, trying desperately to hold in the storm raging inside him. And then there was Max, the golden retriever who had not left Lily's side in weeks, barely eating, barely sleeping, watching her with the unshakable loyalty only animals seem capable of. His heartbeat, steady and strong, thudded against hers like a metronome refusing to let time stop, and began to whine not out of fear, but with urgency, almost like he was pleading. Lily's body, which had been shutting down, began responding. Her vitals improved slowly, then steadily. The inflammation markers that once baffled doctors began to decrease. Her breathing normalized. I was walking away, but Max called me back. Her mother, stunned, asked what she meant. Lily paused, her voice thin but clear. I was in the trees. It was foggy. I could hear you calling, but I felt too far. Then Max barked. I turned around, and I ran to him, and through all of it, Max stayed in bed, refusing to eat, refusing to leave, refusing to rest, as if transferring his will to her hour by hour. He hadn't just guarded her. He had gone into that gray in-between space where children disappear into silence and pulled her back. Nurses began referring to him not as a pet, but as her protector. The hospital allowed him to stay because everyone had seen it. Max had brought Lily back when even medicine couldn't. Then came the sound no one expected, Lily's breath sharper, deeper. What we're seeing here, it's not just remission. It's something else, something we can't quantify. There's no scientific reason for the changes in her readings this fast, but it's real. And if I'm being honest, I think her dog played a part. Her parents didn't need convincing. They'd seen it with their own eyes, the way Max laid over her, the way her heartbeat synced with his, the moment she returned from the edge. A single inhale that wasn't just shallow survival, but strength. Her eyes fluttered again. Max leaned down and gently pawed at her shoulder. Max, she whispered, her lips barely moving. Her mother gasped. The nurse dropped the oxygen monitor. She's stabilizing, the doctor said. Under his breath, as if afraid to break the moment, he nudged her face gently, then licked her cheek in slow, rhythmic motions. Her eyelids fluttered. Her vitals dipped again. The machine beat lower. Her mother screamed for the nurse. But Max didn't move. He placed his head directly over Lily's chest, his breath warm, his body still, eyes wide open. The photo went viral overnight. People from around the world began sending letters, prayers, and gifts. Dog owners wrote in saying how their animals had done unexplainable things too. Psychologists, veterinarians, and spiritual healers all offered their insights. But Max didn't care about the cameras or the praise. He just lay next to Lily, rising only when she stirred, eating only when she took a bite, as if his life had been rewired completely for hers. He wasn't panicking. He was doing something. He lay with his chin pressed against the side of her bed, ears twitching slightly with every labored breath she took, his tail no longer wagging, his usual energy long gone. It was as if he was grieving her before she was even gone. But that night, everything felt different. There was a stillness in the air that felt unnatural, a silence that wasn't peace but warning. Lily's breaths were growing slower, weaker, and with a voice that was barely more than a breath. She whispered, "I'm tired. I think it's time." The words hung in the air like a thread stretched to its limit. Her mother broke into sobs instantly, clutching Lily's tiny hand, begging her to hold on just a little longer. Her father turned from the window, his face pale, and rushed to her side. But then Max moved. He hadn't barked in days. barely made a sound except for the occasional sigh of fatigue. But now, he stood suddenly, his body alert, eyes wide, and released a single sharp bark that cut through the room like a lightning strike. Everyone jumped. Max stepped up, placing one paw gently on the bed, then another, and before anyone could stop him, he was on top of the covers, hovering carefully over Lily. What he did next would shake everyone present to the core. Max pressed his body against Lily's chest, not with force, but with purpose. The nurse rushed in, then the doctor, but as they prepared to administer stabilizers, Max suddenly lifted his head. What followed over the next 48 hours couldn't be explained medically. Later that night, the doctor pulled her parents aside. The local news caught wind of the story after a nurse posted a single photo on social media of Lily, in bed, eyes closed, with Max curled protectively over her like a golden guardian. And perhaps the most incredible moment came 5 days later when Lily, frail, pale, but conscious, opened her eyes fully for the first time and whispered to her mom. It was then they knew. It wasn't just Max's presence that saved her. It was something deeper, something unexplainable, a bond that went beyond flesh and science. And this was only the beginning of the miracle. In the days that followed Lily's astonishing turnaround, the world outside their quiet suburban neighborhood began to close in. The photo of Max lying protectively over her frail body had swept across the internet like wildfire, but what Max did was different. Lily had been hours away from slipping into permanent silence. Her organs were failing. Every medical chart pointed to the same grim outcome. I've worked in pediatrics for 25 years, he said, standing quietly in Lily's room while Max slept curled at her feet. I've seen hope. I've seen love do amazing things. Lily was asleep, her parents in the next room. A university specializing in animal cognition reached out, offering to study Max. They wanted to understand how he was detecting her decline. Was it scent, sound, instinct? But Daniel, Lily's father, shook his head. You can't put him in a lab. He's not a subject. He's hers. The monitor showed a sudden drop in her pulse. Before the machine could even beep, Max stood up from the corner of the bed. He sat with the family and explained. There have been rare cases. They said the dog kept the man alive for 3 days until rescue arrived. By literally keeping his heartbeat steady, you're saying he didn't just comfort her. He stabilized her. Very rare, where animals, particularly dogs, seem to sync their heart rate and breathing with their humans. I'm saying there's more to the bond between them than we can understand. He didn't just feel her slipping. He pulled her back. It's called co-regulation. It's been observed in therapy cases, but in extreme circumstances, like war or trauma, the bond can become deeper. One afternoon, as she sat in the garden wrapped in a blanket, she whispered to her mother, "When I almost left, I saw a place." The hospital cleared her as medically stable but under observation, but the doctors couldn't explain it. A child who had been ready to leave was still here. Because love, in its purest form, refused to let death win. They simply noted in her chart, spontaneous recovery coinciding with canine intervention. It was quiet. Like a forest in the fog. I could hear you crying far away. I wanted to go to sleep there, but the family kept it simple. They didn't need fame. What they needed was gratitude. Because after Lily's story reached the world, hundreds of families with sick children reached out, saying their pets had done similar things. Researchers began studying the phenomenon seriously. Hospitals quietly began reconsidering the role of animals in end-of-life care. And one by one, stories of unexplainable recoveries started surfacing, all with one common thread: a faithful animal who refused to let go and let out a soft bark that echoed across the park like a promise kept. So they held a small gathering in the town park where it all began. Neighbors came. Nurses came. Even the skeptical doctors came. Lily stood in a simple white dress, holding Max's leash, and spoke softly into a microphone. I don't remember all the medicine. I don't remember all the machines. But I remember Max. He's the reason I'm still here. He didn't let me go. Her mother nodded, tears welling up. Lily continued softly, but then I heard Max barking. Not like a normal bark. It was like he was calling me. I followed his voice. I turned around, and suddenly, I was back here. He placed both front paws over her tiny chest and lowered his head, breathing deeply, pressing his heartbeat to hers. Lily nodded, resting her cheek against Max's warm fur. He told me it wasn't time. Within seconds, her pulse climbed back to normal. No medicine. No intervention. Just Max. But the real proof was Lily herself, her color returning, her laughter slowly bubbling back, her tiny hands regaining strength. And through it all, Max stayed vigilant, his eyes always scanning her, always knowing. But this? He shook his head slowly. This isn't something I can chart on a graph. Something in him triggered something in her. And yet, after Max climbed onto her bed and pressed his chest to hers, her vitals changed in minutes. It was too fast, too precise, too specific to dismiss as coincidence. Shared millions of times with captions calling him the miracle dog and angel in golden fur. News vans began appearing outside the house. Neighbors whispered in awe. He seemed to know when she was about to struggle before a machine picked it up. On to separate nights, when Lily's oxygen levels dipped while she slept, Max stirred moments before the monitor alarmed. He would nudge her face gently until her breathing steadied. Nurses wrote it down. Doc intervened before medical decline. Doctors visited, not just to monitor Lily, but to witness what they couldn't explain. And through it all, Max remained calm, almost regal. Like he understood the gravity of what he had done. He followed Lily's every movement as she regained strength, from her first slow sips of water to the day she sat up and ate it, her small hand clutching Max's fur for balance. Nurses who had once come expecting to say goodbye now came just to see her smile. But as miraculous as it all was, one question began to rise among the doctors, the reporters, and even Lily's parents: how? It wasn't just emotional support. They all knew therapy animals brought comfort, sometimes even improved recovery rates. The head physician, Dr. Raymond, a man known for his hard skepticism, began visiting the home. So they began to observe. At first, it seemed simple: Max was calming her. But then they noticed patterns. Then came the night that sent chills down everyone's spine. Word spread beyond local news. And yet, even Lily began to notice things that unsettled her parents. Her father's hands trembled. "You're saying Max brought you back?" The story grew beyond their town. Journalists came with cameras, veterinarians came with theories. Then one day, Dr. Raymond arrived with something unusual, an old study he had dug up from a wartime medical archive. He flipped open a faded photograph from decades ago, a soldier lying unconscious on a battlefield, his military dog sprawled over him. Daniel stared at the photo, then looked at Max. Doctor, Raymond hesitated. The family sat in silence. Lily stroked Max's fur and whispered, "I knew he wouldn't let me go." Weeks passed, and Lily grew stronger. She took her first steps with Max walking beside her like a patient. Years passed like chapters in a book no one expected to keep writing. The seasons changed, and so did Lily, from the frail, pale little girl who once hovered at the edge of life. She grew stronger each day, her laughter gradually replacing the haunting silence that once filled her room. By the time she was 12, her cheeks were rosy again, her hair thick and golden like the dog who never left her side. By the time Lily turned 16, Max began to slow down. She placed her hand on his soft fur and whispered, "You can rest if you're tired." At his small memorial service, people gathered with candles, holding photos of their own pets, sharing stories of how Max's courage had inspired them. Lily stood at the front, holding his collar in her hands, her voice trembling as she spoke. It became a bestseller, touching millions, and was adapted into a documentary that left entire theaters in tears. But more than fame, Lily cared about the message. Sometimes healing doesn't come from medicine alone. He lived on in every child who found hope, in every family who chose love over despair, and in every life his story touched. Sometimes it comes from love so pure it transcends everything we think we know about life and death. He wasn't just my dog. He was my family. When I was ready to leave this world, he wouldn't let me. He reminded me I still had more life to live. And even now, he's still reminding me, "You've done enough for me." More than anyone ever could. Inspired by what he had done, Lily's parents started a foundation in his name, the Maxwell Hope Project, dedicated to training and pairing therapy dogs with terminally ill children. They partnered with hospitals, schools, and even veterans programs, spreading Max's legacy across the country. She knelt by the memorial stone engraved with his name and whispered, "I made it this far because of you." She closed her eyes and for just a moment swore she could feel the warmth of his fur brushing against her cheek. Hear the soft echo of his heartbeat next to hers, the same rhythm that once guided her back to the world. Within years, thousands of children had therapy animals at their side during treatments. Some even experienced unexplained recoveries, echoing Lily's miraculous return. Scientists began studying these bonds more seriously, finding evidence that animals could stabilize heart rates, reduce trauma responses, and even trigger dormant parts of the brain linked to healing. Max looked up at her with those deep, soulful eyes and gently rested his head on her lap, closing his eyes with a sigh that felt almost like relief. His muzzle turned silver, his steps grew heavy, and the boundless energy that once filled him softened into a quiet dignity. Lily noticed first. She'd catch him staring at her sometimes, not in his usual watchful way, but with something deeper, something like, "Goodbye, school," returned. Slowly, at first with tutoring at home, then real classrooms filled with friends. But everywhere Lily went, Max was there. He walked beside her like a shadow of hope, his fur glistening in the sun, his eyes always scanning for danger, as if he still carried the memory of the day he had pulled her back from the fog. Max became a local legend. People would visit the park just to see the golden retriever who saved the girl the doctors gave up on. Newspapers called him the miracle guardian, and hospitals quietly studied Lily's case to understand what had really happened. But to Lily, Max wasn't a miracle, he was just her best friend. Every night, she whispered secrets to him, telling him about her dreams, about how she still sometimes remembered the forest of fog and the faint echo of his bark guiding her back. Max would listen in silence, only nudging her when her voice trembled. But time is not kind, even to heroes. One autumn afternoon, Lily sat with him in the garden where the sunlight filtered through the trees, just like it had years ago when he saved her. When Max passed quietly in his sleep weeks later, The town mourned as though they had lost one of their own. But Max's story didn't end there. Lily grew up carrying that story everywhere she went. She wrote a book called Back by Love, detailing how Max saved her life. On the 10th anniversary of Max's passing, Lily returned to the small garden where it all began, and as the sun dipped below the horizon, Lily smiled through her tears, knowing Max hadn't really left. Because sometimes a dog isn't just a dog. Sometimes they're the reason we stay.